Welcome back. Now, it's been a rather tense week in Abuja, the nation's capital, after gunmen stormed the University of Abuja in the wee hours of Tuesday morning, abducting 2 professors, 1 non-academic staff, and 3 others. Now, 24 hours after the attack, the abductors reached out to the families of the victims, demanding 50 million naira per person, rounding up the figure to 300 million naira in total. After spending 3 days in captivity, the Federal Capital Territory Police Command later said it rescued all the abducted victims through a joint operation with other security agencies. It is, however, unclear if any ransom was paid or not. Let's now take a listen to one of the victims relay his experience in the hands of the kidnappers. And by the way, this victim is actually not among those just rescued now by the police. Was actually released by the kidnappers on the day they were kidnapped, giving their own reasons. Let's take a listen to the victim.
I said yes, 12:30, we heard gunshots around the community, and it seems we were under attack, so we were able to gain access into our house and took some of our belongings. Also went with some of us in the house, my dad and my junior brother. So that's the situation. However, I was with them, but when we traveled a little, they decided to send some of us back, 2 persons, and that's 6 persons were taken with them. They didn't say much. I don't really know why, but that was their decision. They just decided to do that.
Now, this is the first high-profile attack on a campus in the nation's capital after a wave of mass abductions in schools, especially situated in more remote locations. Joining me now to discuss this further is security risk management expert, Dr. ADAMU. Doc, thank you very much for joining us on the program. You're definitely not surprised that the University of Abuja would be attacked. I mean, such a high-profile institution, are you?
No, not at all. It's not the fact that it is high profile that made me not surprised, but the fact that it's located next to the ungoverned spaces that we've always talked about, saying that these are the locations that hide these bandits and that they usually launch their attacks from. So if you look at Gwagwalada has proximity to some ungoverned spaces that traverse Kogi State, that traverse Nasarawa, and to an extent, depending on what direction you take, traverses Niger State. Now, this means, for instance, that all of these 3 states that I've mentioned do have high rates of banditry and other types of violent criminality. And so it was very possible that at some point in time, their focus would be on the University of Abuja, being that its location and the fact that it has both lecturers, academic and non-academic, as well as students, for which we know they've already been targeted.
And I think you have a strong point there, because, I mean, looking at where, for instance, the staff quarters is situated, you look at the entire environment there, it's essentially surrounded by bush. I mean, like a thick forest. You see that there's also something like a hill or a mountain behind the staff quarters. So it means these bandits or these kidnappers are taking advantage of environments like that to carry out their activities.
Exactly. The presence of ungoverned spaces, you've just described some of them, forested areas, mountainous areas, and sometimes even where water bodies exist, over time have been occupied by these non-state actors. And it's easy for them to hold huge numbers of persons in these ungoverned spaces. And so, yes, they are taking advantage of these ungoverned spaces, both to, hibernate and then to launch, as well as to hold their victims. It's almost impossible for them to hold the number of persons that they are holding in developed communities, where people can see their movement, can see their activities, and then disrupt them. But when they're in such ungoverned spaces, it's very easy. They can, nobody's challenging them really in those ungoverned spaces so they can do as they wish. And like we've seen in places like Zamfara and Katsina, they've declared themselves as government within these ungoverned spaces. So yes, these locations are primarily behind these occurrences that we're seeing. There are other factors, other reasons, but this existence of ungoverned spaces, for me, is the primary reason for where we are.
You would think that because this happens in Nigeria regularly, because everybody knows the problem with ungoverned spaces, and even the authorities of the university know that that area where the staff quarters is located could be susceptible to attacks. The question is, why are they not taking, preemptive actions, if you like, to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen? For instance, you would expect that there would be proper security arrangement around the university staff quarters, considering the location of the place, but none of that happened. Does it mean that we're actually not learning from what is happening, or people are just choosing to do nothing at all?
So, your brilliant question, but the answer lies in several places, internal and external to the university. So let me start with the internal. Every security program, an effective one, has three components: the people's component, the technology component, and the process component. And under these three components, you have different sub-components. So for people, as an example, the personnel that would provide security. What is the criteria for recruitment of the personnel? I know the university has done quite well. I've engaged with some security personnel within the university, and I know they have most times, retired military personnel, especially within the management level of the security arrangement. But then they also have guard, what we call proprietary guards. These are guards that are owned by the university, and they even went to the extent of obtaining licenses for them to bear weapons. So they've done quite well. But then, because this is just one component of the three pronged program that a good security program should have, the other components, unfortunately, I based on the little audit I did, there are gaps in those components. So the technology component, as an example, we should have enough CCTVs or some other form of surveillance capabilities within the university campus, as well as the staff quarters and other locations of the university, that would alert the university when there is any approach that is unauthorized. In this instance, they came 12 midnight. If there was surveillance, somebody should have seen it in a monitoring room, should have hinted the security guards, and then it automatically also informed the public security agencies, who in turn would now respond speedily. But because there was no surveillance, that kind of technology, nobody saw it. And this people component that I talked about only have pump action weapons. And these guys came with AK-47. They did their best. I'm sure the numbers would have been higher than the 6 that happened if this armed security personnel in the university campus had not attempted to prevent them. Now, the third component, which is the process component, puts together this other two components. We have to talk about physical security, as an example, the fences around the university, the types of intelligence you are able to gather within the university community, the early warning systems that you have put in place within not just the community within the university, but outside the university. Remember, they are part of a larger community. How do this security program harvest intelligence from this larger community? Because before any attack happens, there would be surveillance by the would-be attacker, and if you have a good early warning system in place, you'll be able to pick it. Time would not allow me to go into the details of these three programs, but my little audit that I did tells me that there is a weakness in this little program. Now, that is for internal. If we look at the external components, these ungoverned spaces, from my understanding, the only agency that has responsibility for oversight over them are the forest rangers that we have. And if you do a little bit of research, you find out that unit, which is under the Ministry of Environment, first off, it doesn't have enough personnel. Those personnel don't have enough weapons. It's not well budgeted. And so it leaves that particular sector, unfortunately, vulnerable to occupation by the non-state actors. The police, the military and the others that carry out periodic operations within those forests don't have the capacity to dominate the forest completely. Now, that is one aspect of this external explanation. The other aspect is constitutional, where there is no clear jurisdiction over these ungoverned spaces, as it were. Some of the reserves, it's the federal government that has authority over them, while the forested areas are the state government. And of course, because in our constitution, the state government don't have any sort of role to play with it in terms of security, then the responsibility lies on the federal government. So there is a lacuna there where you've given states the responsibility to occupy these spaces, but then they don't have any control over security, as it were. So the only thing they can do in certain instances is to engage hunters, engage vigilante, and we know that these hunters and vigilantes don't have the kind of weaponry that these guys who occupy the ungoverned spaces do. So again, the answer is not as easy as just saying that what is being done. There is a constitutional issue that needs to be looked at and changed to allow it.
But again, you look at all of this. I just hope with everything you have painted, I hope that all other universities and higher institutions in the country will be listening and doing something, because you look at the geographic location of the university. I'm talking about the University of Abuja now. The peculiarities you have there, there's nothing peculiar. Virtually most of our universities are their geolocation is almost as the same as that of the University of Abuja. They're usually located in somehow forested areas and all of that. So you would think that other universities and higher institutions will be learning from this and take action so that to make sure anything like this does not happen to them. But we're waiting to see, because it will be quite disappointing if tomorrow we hear of another university too, in another university like the University of Abuja coming under attack and this kind of thing happening. But very quickly, before I let you go, how do we stop this, especially these attacks on schools? How exactly do we stop it? And I'll give you just a minute or so to round off.
Okay. DG, the good news is that Nigeria just hosted this Safe School Declaration Conference, the fourth to ever hold around the world, and we hosted the entire world. And what was the objective of that conference is to make schools safer. Now, even though unfortunately I'm yet to see the communique from that conference, but I sat through it and I listened to what was discussed. We've got the solutions. A month ago, actually, the Ministry of Education launched a guideline on safe schools, and then it also launched the template for the implementation of that guideline. So for me, the way to go is to harness our national powers, as it were, seek the support of our international partners, and seek the implementation of that Safe School Declaration document that tells clearly all the various components of what we need to do to ensure that schools are safe. Time will not allow me to go into the various aspects of that Safe School Declaration, but the key component is that the educational facilities should be safe, irrespective of what type of conflict is going on. So both government and the non-state actors should recognize that educational facilities should be immune to what type of attacks are happening at all points in time. If we can implement that document, I think in the next few months, yes, our schools are likely to be safe. But I wouldn't want what has happened to other guidelines that have been launched by government to happen to this one. So I recommend as speedily as possible that the Ministry of Education engages with the state governors, especially since education is not in the exclusive list. Both states and federal government have roles to play in this. They should engage with the governors immediately to get their buy-in for the implementation of that document. And I already said that our international partners are willing to support us. Both the UN and several other non-governmental organizations, local and international, will be willing to support the implementation of that document. So the earlier we start that, the better. We have the answers. The next thing is to implement it, and we should implement it in a democratic manner where we get the buy-in of every Nigerian towards its implementation.
All right. Dr. Kabir ADAMU, Security Risk Management Expert, and also the Managing Director, CEO of Beacon Consulting, which is a security consulting services based in Abuja. We thank you very much for joining us on the program and for sharing your thoughts with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, that's how much we can take on the program this week. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.